Hello, welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy. Hope you all had a wonderful 4th. I was away hiking, which is why I'm a little late posting. Um, I was over on the Olympic Peninsula. So last week I talked about going to Mount Rainier. Well, the heat has come to the Pacific Northwest, and it was actually going to be quite warm over in Mount Rainier. So I was actually looking around in the state to see where it was going to be a little cooler. And so I ended up going over to the Olympic Peninsula. So I um, got up early on the 5th and hiked to the top of Mount Townsend. And I will insert some footage here um, of the view from the top. I did chat with some locals up there, and apparently the view is pretty epic that day because it's so clear. Um, so you can see Mount Rainier. I don't know that you'll see it in the clip. Mount Adams was visible, Mount St. Helens was visible. You'll see Mount Baker. Um, Seattle was also visible, uh, which I doubt you'll see in the video clip just because my camera's not that great. It was beautiful. It was amazing. Um, it was a hard hike though. It was hard. And I was actually going to hike again the next day. And I kind of bagged out on that. And I'm kind of glad I did because my calves are quite sore. And I don't normally get sore hiking. But that tells you how steep that hike was. Anyway, it was pretty brutal. Anyway, um, what else? Oh, the other cool thing. So on the 4th, I was sort of I had the van parked on this ridge line, and sort of had a similar view, except a lot lower. And it was cool because you could see fireworks all across the sound. And I was like, huh. And you could see this fireworks over Seattle. So it was pretty cool to. At first I was like, what are all those blinking lights? It sort of took me a moment to realize, like, duh, it's the fireworks. Um, anyway, that was really cool. So those are my latest outdoor adventures. What else? I'm dog sitting. A couple days, I have Knuckles, the greyhound, coming to stay with us for a week. Uh, let's see. He's a foster dog waiting for adoption, and I don't know quite the details of the story, but his foster family unexpectedly needs some construction done in their house, and that was just be obviously a bit much for a foster dog. So I volunteered to take him for the week. So hopefully we'll take Knuckles on some hikes. Although it's supposed to be hot all this week, which um Pacific Northwesterners are notoriously weather wimpy. Um so like when it hits 80 degrees, it's like, oh, they're wilting. I've lived here for a really long time, so although I didn't grow up here, and I think of myself as more, weather hardy, I have to say I've gotten a little wimpy too. And, to be fair, we don't have air conditioning around here, and our houses aren't really built for heat. Um, so, when it's 85 degrees outside, it's like 80 degrees in the house. So, you end up doing a whole lot of nothing. So, I think I'll be doing a whole lot of nothing. Although I am trying to finish a knitted sweater, which knitting, with a hot wool sweater in your lap is not really great. But, you know, knitters gotta knit. Anyway, this is a lot of rambly. Apologies. So let me hop to the reading. Um, okay, I'll start with unpopular opinions. I listened to How to Say Babylon by Safiya Sinclair. This is a memoir. Uh, Safiya is a poet from Jamaica, and she talks about growing up in a very um, patriarchal, authoritarian, Rastafarian household. Um, Sort of her process of growing up and sort of leaving Rastafarianism and um, sort of what that experience was like. This book, I want to say it won a National Book Award in biography, I think. Anyway, it's been very, very lauded. And I can see why, because she's a poet, the writing is beautiful. Some of her descriptions of the beach or, Montego Bay or, you know, are beautiful. Some of her ability to capture her own inner thoughts and feelings was really well done. I liked how she doesn't pass a lot of judgment on her mother's behavior, her father's behavior. She sort of says kind of this is what happens and sort of lets you draw conclusions about sort of what's going on, which I appreciated. So it didn't feel blamey or angry or I felt like enough probably distance has passed that she was able to really sort of reflect on her experiences. All that was great. I found it too long. I found it, I don't know if repetitive is the right word, but I felt like there was a lot of just too much detail. Her going to school and describing experiences of racism, describing experiences of prejudice against Rastafarians, kind of over and over. Um, and I felt like a lot of, perhaps all the anecdotes that are shared weren't particularly necessary to give you the sense of what was going on in her life. Um, so I have to say there were parts where I sped up the video, I mean the audio, um, and I have to say I jumped ahead. I just sort of go whoosh in my Libby app and maybe jump ahead 15 minutes and pick up again because it was like, okay, I get it. I don't need to keep hearing about this. The thing that I did appreciate was the I feel like I had a vague understanding of Rastafarianism, and so I appreciated her explanations about it. Um, and um, the other thing I did, I assumed Rastafari are just sort of, you know, prevalent, not prevalent, but, in Jamaica, and we're sort of accepted part of the culture. I did not realize that Jamaicans really look down on Rastafari as dirty, gross, poor, um, you know, yeah, did not have a very positive view. So I was a little surprised about that. And so that was a good thing. So my mother loves this audiobook, which is partly why I picked it up in audio. Um, and it has gotten a lot of praise. So I think if you pick it up, start reading or start listening, and you really gel with her language, you'll probably really like this. Um, yeah, like I said, I just got a little like impatient. Um, then I finally got Disoriental by Negar Djavadi off my shelf. This is translated from the French by Tina Kover. This book has won numerous awards, and actually was nominated for a National Book Award in a translation. I've had this on my shelf for years, and I finally picked it up for Pride Month. Um, this is the story of a young woman who is Iranian, and she is living in Paris. And it sort of starts off with her in a fertility clinic in Paris, holding um, the the sperm, a container of sperm. Um, so, and then as she's sitting in the waiting room, she starts to sort of tell these stories about her family. Some in one of the blurbs or the print copy, she's sort of called a modern Scheherazade, and I can see in some ways that's a little simplistic because she's Persian and she tells a lot of stories, you know, but it really is sort of these layers upon layers of stories about her family. So she'll say, let me tell you about Uncle number two, but wait, first, I have to tell you about my grandmother, and she'll launch into something. And so she talks about her grandmother being born in a harem, um, and then talks about her parents, her uncles, you know, and interspersed in there is a lot of 20th century Iranian history, which is quite interesting for someone who really uh, didn't know a lot, and also reading about a part of the world that as Americans we sort of consider a hostile country. Um, so she talks about the Shah, the overthrow of the Shah, the Ayatollah, and her parents' place in those revolutions, um, and her eventually her father leaving and emigrating to France, and eventually she and her sisters and her mother emigrating to France. It sounds like this is pretty autobiographical in some ways. Um, And so a lot of it is sort of the contrast between these very traditional family values in Persia and then her being in France and sort of remaking that Persian identity and trying to forge her own family and her own path forward. Um, there's a quote that I'll read that I think pretty much exemplifies um, sort of what, sort of the themes in this book. I have become, as I'm sure everyone does who has left his or her country, someone else. Someone who has translated myself into other culture codes, firstly in order to survive, and then to go beyond survival and forge a future for myself. And since it is generally acknowledged idea that something is lost in translation, it should come as no surprise that we unlearn, at least partially, what we used to be and to make room for what we have become. So this book is in part her becoming disoriental, right? Is losing or reshaping her Persian identity as she moves forward. So, really enjoyed this. I'm glad I finally read this and can take it off my shelf. I listened to, on the way over to the coast, a short book, The Tragedy of Heterosexuality by Jane Ward. This is a nonfiction book. Jane Ward is a professor of gender studies at UC Santa Barbara, and she is looking at heterosexuality from a queer perspective. Um, she now I have never taken a gender studies class. Um, so if you go ahead and read reviews in Goodreads, there is a lot of reviews and commentaries and disagreements and agreements with aspects of this book by people who clearly are knowledgeable of gender studies. That is not me. So definitely look at those, and I read a lot of those because I thought that it was quite interesting and actually like enhanced my reading experience. But I came at it from a completely sort of lay perspective. Um, and so, really, what she's talking about is um, sort of our cis heteronormative patriarchal culture really hurts women. And she has a quote, something about women um, accept love in protection in exchange for servitude. Um, and by servitude, she's talking about child rearing, housekeeping, and in a lot of ways, sexual servitude. Um, and and so the beginning of the book and the introduction, I was like, wow, this is going to be 5 stars. This is amazing. Um, and I thought that was amazing. And then she goes into what she calls the heterosexual repair industry, talking about self-help books and how those have evolved over time. So talking about early like marriage manuals of the turn of the 20th century, right up through um, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and into Sex in the City and other more contemporary self-help books. And I thought that was really fascinating. And basically, she concludes all of these books in some ways reinforce the patriarchy that, the wife needs to look good, cater to her husband's whims and his fragile ego, uh, and support him, while he's, working hard. And if you don't do these things, he might leave you. And then where would you be? Um, so that was all very good. And then she starts to get, uh, I guess, less scientific in the sense that she does and she acknowledges this was a very unscientific poll. But she starts talking to random queer people, um, and people who were in her circle about straight culture, um, and their perspective as a queer person looking at straight culture. Um, so I I lost interest as the book went on. Um, its 5-star shine faded for sure. But I thought the beginning of the book and the discussion about self-help books was really, really fascinating. Um, so, if this is a topic of interest to you, pick it up. And again, I do kind of think it's worth picking up, if only for the introduction. Check it out from the library, read those first couple chapters, and then you can probably put it away. Or you can read the whole thing because, again, it's pretty darn short. I listened to the audiobook and I think it was 6 hours. So, pretty short. Then while I was in the woods, I, you know, I have you when you're getting up, getting down, you're kind of moving and grooving a lot, and it takes forever to cook your meals, and notoriously to make coffee is it's a hard, it's a pain. Um, Still don't have my coffee techniques down, but I need something that is pretty lighthearted. You can put up, put down, you know, and romances. I'm not gelling with romances right now. And I had a great time reading 5 Decembers. Um, I can't remember his first name, something Kestrel. Uh, that was published by Hard Case Crime, and I was in the library, and I saw random Hard Case Crime book, grabbed it off the shelf, love the cover, and picked this up and read it. So this is Fast Charlie by Victor Gischler, movie starring Pierce Brosnan. Love this photo. Had no idea this is a movie. Still, I've never heard of it. Um, this is pulpy noir. This actually was a lot of fun, I have to say. So what is it about? We have Charlie Swift, who is a mob enforcer in Orlando, Florida, and uh, there is another mob boss down in Miami who is trying to take over Charlie's boss's territory. And here it is. Here's the story of that. Again, what can I say? I I sat down. I think the first night I read like 130 pages or something. Like it was just kind of the perfect uh, flipping pages, not too hard. I mean, it wasn't bad writing. It was just fun. And then I had my hike the next day, and I sat uh, at the coast, um, and finished the book, and it was like it was kind of the perfect thing. Pulpy, noir, thrillery, you know, it's a shoot 'em up mob story. I mean, come on. Um, what do I have going on currently? Still reading The Diviners with Maya and Lindy. I am listening to The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Katherine Arden. Um, and then I need to pick up, now that I've finished Fast Charlie, I need to pick up another book to read. And I'm not sure quite what I want to do. Yeah. Um, I think that's it. Uh, yeah. So I know it is actually genuinely hot in other parts of the country. So hope you all are doing well. Um, hopefully many of you are sitting at the air conditioner doing some good reading. I will sit out here and try and read, and it's going to get a little too hot, and so I'll go back inside this afternoon. Good luck, everybody.